Well, I see people are starting to join us today, and we want to welcome everybody. We have special guest here with us today. I'm Nancy Dessler, and I'm with Circle of Life Hospice, and we appreciate you guys all joining us today. Our topic today is coping with grief, loss, and isolation during the holidays. And, you know, it's a tough time right now, and so this is a great topic that we wanted to cover, just really provide some insight and some help for all of you. Our special guests today are Allison Wright, who is our bereavement and spiritual care manager, and Karen Grumme-Rodriguez, who is our bereavement counselor. And we appreciate you guys being here today and all that you have to share with us. I'll turn it over to you. Just wanted to cover one other thing now that I thought about it. We will be taking questions at the end of our session. So if you think of those while you're listening, we will take those at the very end, so you can just keep those in your head and type those in towards the end of the session. So, all right, ladies, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
And thank you for joining us this afternoon. In today's webinar, we are going to cover about learning how to observe the holidays while honoring your grief. We know that the holidays are particularly difficult if you're grieving, especially this year. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some insight about just acknowledging ways that grief can be triggered and how to manage that and react to that. Know that you are not alone if you are struggling to find joy this holiday season. 2020 has been a very difficult year for most. We're going to explore ways to maintain, modify, and build on existing traditions. It's a year of embracing creativity and technology and new ways of connecting and trying to find joy. Consider ways to find joy where you can by modifying expectations of yourself and others. We're going to talk about developing strategies to navigate complicated family dynamics. Most of us have some special relatives that are extra challenging, so we'll give you some tools to navigate those situations. And learn how to set boundaries, decline invitations, and make self-care a top priority.
Thank you. So how can we observe the holidays while also acknowledging our grief? Well, it's important to acknowledge our feelings, not only those emotions that we can readily identify, but also to acknowledge those emotions that may be simmering underneath the surface. If you will visualize kind of like an iceberg, what you see floating on top of the water is not necessarily all that's underneath. So it's important to recognize that you just can't force yourself to be happy just because it's the holiday season. In times of stress, you may lack the ability to experience pleasure in what you once found pleasurable. You just might not be able to do it. 2020 has introduced many stressful events into our lives. Stress and depression are common feelings that are already prevalent during the holidays. They're a reminder of what we have lost. In our reminiscing, it's just natural to miss those who have gone before us and who no longer may be with us physically. Just acknowledge that during the holidays, grieving can be especially painful. Particularly this year, it's particularly difficult for so many. We've had so many collective losses, not only the loss of loved ones for some, but also the loss of our assumptive world, right? The way we view things really should be. We have additional worries right now, worries about our health. We may have an inability to travel or gather with friends and loved ones, which provides us with comfort and allows us to cope in adaptive ways. We may have high tensions surrounding differences of opinions with family members or friends. Some of you may know of someone or had an experience where you've been unfriended or you've unfriended someone on social media over escalation and differences of thoughts and feelings and the way you feel things should be. And COVID-19, we can't talk about 2020 without acknowledging COVID-19, especially with the increase in infections and with people here locally possibly having experienced the death of loved ones as a result of it. in addition to the other impacts of the pandemic. School closing, university closing, people are working from their homes, job shifts and changes. So as a result of this, it might be necessary for us to have to form new traditions. But we may resent having to start new traditions. Our traditions and the rituals that are associated with them are what makes the holidays special to us. So it's okay to acknowledge that there's loss in that as well.
This is certainly a different kind of holiday. Most of us have heard the term new normal more than we cared to, and the year of the pivot, and there's a new vocabulary with quarantining and everything that has followed with the pandemic. A lot of us traditionally maybe took vacations around the holidays, attended parades, maybe attended Christmas Eve church service with a candle lighting and communion and songs, and a lot of that is kind of out the window this year. Those traditions are not going to be possible because of the need to physically distance. So this will be a new year for all of us, and what that looks like. Thankfully, we're going to have nice weather on this Thanksgiving, so there is an opportunity to get outside. Maybe it's eating outside, having a lot smaller gatherings, if any gatherings. Some of us will spend the holidays in total isolation. There will be a lot of virtual events embracing new technology. Maybe you've learned about Zoom and FaceTime and Skype for the first time this year and embracing that. There's a lot of ways that we can feel connected by using technology, even though we can't physically gather. I've heard of many families planning to have dinner by video, maybe open presents that way, cook that way, just creative ways to stay connected. And for a lot of us, there are some new financial stressors due to the pandemic, whether that be job loss or hours cut. And so things look very different than they have in the past. And we are embracing new ways of celebrating, of gathering, and shows potential for the human spirit and our ability to be resilient.
So it's important for us to recognize that in times like these, we need to find joy where we can. And a positive attitude helps us to put the fun in dysfunction. We need to look for the humor. We need to seek the ridiculous and acknowledge it. And then we may be able to laugh. And laughter provides us with hope. And hope in the humor allows us a broader perspective in our outlook on what is possible. We can choose to be the best versions of ourselves and empower ourselves to celebrate or not celebrate in the ways that feel right to us. Write down 3 funny, ridiculous things that have happened to you or will happen to you as you go through the holiday season this year. And the emotions that you had associated with those experiences. Some of the funniest holiday traditions involve crazy, wacky things that happen. And if you write them down and something else happens similar down the road, it may bring a smile to your face again. And be creative in doing things that bring you joy. Control what you can control and release and find peace with what you can't. We don't have control over when this will end, and we don't have control over how much toilet paper or hand sanitizer are in the stores. But we can turn off the news when we get overwhelmed by it. We can limit our social media, and we can try to find kindness and grace in what we see unfolding around us. Focus on gratitude as well. Not only focusing on it, but expressing it. Name the little things that you find joy in each day. Often it's the little things that add up and not one momentous event that brings us the most happiness.
So navigating complicated family dynamics. This is something that comes up for most of us. There can be some challenging relatives. it's united with siblings, whether that be virtually or safely in person, whatever that looks like for you. Some kind of triggers can come up of maybe you have a bossy older sister or a younger brother that's always late. Those things can be triggered with how things were in your primary family as you gather, even as adults. So don't expect to heal old wounds at holiday gatherings. It's really not the place for that. And if you let that expectation go and try to just embrace the present, and however things unfold, you'll find yourself having a happier holiday. With difficult family members, keep conversations simple and focus on what you like about them and what you have in common rather than your differences. If you feel a strong emotional reaction, remove yourself from the situation or change the conversation. Remember that you have the power in how you respond. Manage your own expectations of others and learn to recognize your holiday triggers. Oftentimes the same circumstances or events unfold year after year, and you have the power to stop those patterns in the way that you respond. When you meet dysfunction with incredibly healthy functioning on your part, you don't hand over your emotions and you won't have regrets later. Don't forget to breathe and remember that whatever the circumstances are, to just let it go when you can.
Breathing is very important, particularly with difficult family members. Remember, in through the nose, out through the mouth. So in navigating complicated family dynamics, be aware of your own motivations and engaging in what we call hot topics, right? Are you really wanting to listen and get their perspective on things? Or are you really trying to validate your own pre-existing thoughts and feelings, right? Try a strategy that we call perspective taking, which is to just imagine that you're putting on the sweatshirt of the rival sports team, and to understand as you put that sweatshirt on how that person came to love that article of clothing, all the experience that they had to have to get that love of that sweatshirt. And that way you change your perspective because you're seeing the world through their eyes. You're developing a new lens. Minimize misunderstandings with good communication. If somebody says something and you're like, not really sure how to take that, ask them to clarify. Say, what exactly did you mean by that? The I statements instead of the you statements. Remember that you statements are a way of avoiding emotions, and you're placing responsibility on the other person. Whereas I statements not only make it clear how you feel, but it says that you are willing to take ownership of them. And I statements really help to increase that good communication that we just talked about. And keep relationships at the top of your mind. Ask yourself, will this really matter 6 months down the road? Do I really need to engage right now? And practice compassion, not only for yourself, but for the others around you. Remember kindness and grace. 2020 has been a really difficult year for most of us in ways that we may never have expected. You just really don't know. Remember that iceberg. There might be more going on underneath that surface than you're readily seeing. And avoid conversational narcissism and at least statements. Conversational narcissism is a really big word, and Allison is going to explain to you what it means.
So we have, for most of us, we have either been on the receiving end of someone engaging in conversational narcissism, or we can think of a time where we've been guilty of it ourselves. So what is conversational narcissism? It's the desire to take over a conversation, to do most of the talking, and to turn the focus on yourself. In an effort to make others feel that they aren't alone, we can make mistakes with grieving friends and family by unconsciously making the conversation about us instead of offering true empathy and support. This is often a default to a subject you're comfortable with because you're uncomfortable with raw emotions. Instead, lean in, embrace silence, ask questions, and really listen. When you practice conversational narcissism, you're not offering support. You're asking someone who is hurting to stop sharing and listen to your story. So Karen and I are going to go through some examples to let you see maybe real examples of what that looks like, and talk a little bit about how it feels. A shift response shifts the attention back to yourself. That is conversational narcissism. What we suggest instead is a support response. And that is a response that supports the other person's comments. So we will do a little role play with you here to let you know what that looks like.
Okay, some shift responses as well as some support responses. So I'm really having a hard time with the holidays this year.
Me too. I'm totally overwhelmed with cooking and cleaning and wrapping presents. How did that feel, Karen? Did you feel?
Well, that wasn't about me, that's for sure.
That's right. I made it all about myself.
Exactly. So let's talk about a different way to do it now. All right, let's try again. I'm really having a hard time with the holidays this year.
What's going on? What's the hardest part for you right now? How did that feel different?
I felt hurt, for sure. And you're interested in actually what I had to say.
Definitely.
So let's try again. I really miss my dad.
Me too. I haven't seen my dad in months.
Well, darn. I don't know where to go from there because you just made it about you again, Allison.
All right, let's try again.
I really miss my dad.
What was he like? What are some of your favorite memories of him?
I definitely hear the difference.
So those are six examples. It's just thoughtful questions and really striving to learn more and be present and listen. As you can see, and as you can maybe relate to in your personal life, it feels much better to hear a support response and to also give one.
So now we're going to go ahead and talk about at least statements. I like to call these the great minimizer. I really miss my mom around Thanksgiving.
At least you can make window visits at the facility.
Really, Allison?
It's very much like shift responses, and we are looking for some humor here, but as you can see, they're not comforting. We'll go through a few more for you. So I'll start this time. The holidays are going to be really hard this year. We aren't going to be able to gather or have our annual Christmas trip.
At least you can afford to buy presents and you'll get to see your cousin.
That didn't make me feel better.
No. So let's try this one. I'm really worried about Tom. He has COVID.
At least you have health insurance and he isn't in the high risk category. So as you can see, these are not helpful. But again, we are all guilty of making at least statements ourselves or receiving them. So the lesson here is to practice support responses. Supportive responses don't start with at least.
So one of the ways that you can plan to experience the holiday to the greatest benefit is to plan ahead, right? Ask yourself ahead of time, how are you going to respond when your sister-in-law says, do you really need that extra piece of pie? You know, it's going to happen to all of us. It's just best if we know what we're going to say before it does. And I also like to add too, now that you're aware of shift versus support responses, really pay attention to what's happening on the table around you or in the room around you or on phone conversations or in video chats. Maybe you can be the rescuer in that situation now that you're aware of what it is that you're seeing or hearing. Try to avoid drinking too much. Alcohol is a depressant and it also lowers our inhibitions. Often it is the direct cause of us doing the face palms 3 months down the road when we ask ourselves, why did I say that? Or what was that other person thinking? Try not to take the bait on political conversations or difficult topics. Remember the rules of the third. Remember that typically a third of the people that we like to surround ourselves are truly empathetic helpers. They're there to support us and our needs and also they have a desire to understand us. A third of people we surround ourselves with are what we call neutral. They neither help nor hinder, try to view them as being Switzerland, okay? And then a third of people may unintentionally pull you off your path to healing and result in you not really having adaptive coping. They're difficult people to work around. We can't always avoid them, but we can choose to fill our energy, fill our cups with people who are giving back, which is the first 2/3 that we talked about. Remember, if you're going to be alone this holiday season, make plans for yourself and include as many activities that bring you joy as much as possible. This is the opportunity to have 3 starches with your Thanksgiving turkey and no one is going to say a word to you about it. There doesn't have to be a salad on the table.
So avoid comparisons. If you are on social media, then you are aware that people show their best side, but it's not a full version. As the picture indicates, you know, a lot of pictures have a filter and people generally only share the good things. So if you have a lot of struggles on your end, it can feel isolating, like you're the only one going through it. But remember that social media is an illusion. The magazines that you see, they've been touched up and it is not reality. Give yourself grace. It's okay to cater a meal, to skip sending Christmas cards, pass on putting lights up if you don't want to. It's also okay to have a huge decorated meal by yourself and light up the neighborhood. It's whatever makes you happy. Try your best to let go of expectations and remember that simple is okay.
Embrace imperfections. Imperfections are what makes our holidays. We often don't realize it, but if you think about it, our best memories revolve around the time Grandma put salt instead of sugar in the pumpkin pie, or watching someone open up a gift from Great Aunt Gertrude, which includes the pink bunny outfit that they showed in A Christmas Story. There can be a dizzying array of demands on us and expectations during the holidays anyway, and that is in the absence of a pandemic. I often like to use the metaphor of the empty cup. Just recognize that every day you wake up, hopefully your cup is empty, and everything that happens to you throughout the day fills that cup up just a little bit more. With all the things happening during the holidays, our cups can get really close to overflowing. So just focus on what you can do. The burnt edges around the Christmas cookies are still tasty, and if the icing is smeared, that's okay too. Martha Stewart, who is here, is not reality. Those are the expectations that are imposed on us by relatives and ourselves, and also through social media. So understand that this image isn't realistic for most of us. I often wonder what Joanna Gaines's house looks like when the cameras aren't on.
Very true. And boundaries are very important, and they help set limits for us and to take care of ourselves. And we can't give into others if our cup is always empty. So you've got to carve out some time to replenish. And with that, it's learning how to say no, which isn't comfortable for a lot of us, but it is important to be able to take care of ourselves. So maybe you set limits ahead of time about things like how long you will stay at a family function, and learn to say no instead of saying yes when you should say no. It can leave you feeling resentful and overwhelmed. So if your family expects you to cook the turkey and all of the sides, maybe you say no. I'll cook the turkey, you guys bring the sides. If finances are difficult this year, and maybe in the past you've paid for the meal, or you've paid for a getaway or something like that, it's okay to say no, I can't do it this year. Everybody pay their part. If you take on things that you shouldn't or that you can't, then it will not bring you joy this holiday season. Stick to a budget and don't try to buy happiness. Remember that that is fleeting and you'll be stuck with the bill, and that can add more stress. So it's important to plan ahead and remember that if nothing else, 2020 has taught us about just the importance of connection and the little things, and will make us so much more grateful when we have some sense of normalcy back one day. Limit commitments if overcommitting is a source of stress for you. Make self-care a priority. As Karen talked about, the news and social media, you know, we can be inundated with that, and right now it's this heightened sense of emergency and a lot of bad news. And if you find yourself becoming stressed or anxious or upset or maybe losing sleep, take control of that. You have the power to turn the TV off, to limit social media. Don't follow things that upset you. Just be aware of the control that you possess. And if you find it upsetting, then turn it off and do something healthy.
Remember to make time for yourself. This may be one of the most important things that we talk about today. Self-care is more important than ever. The greatest gift you can experience is that you give back to yourself. The need for self-compassion right now is paramount. I would love for you to treat yourself as you treat your friends. We often have higher expectations of ourselves than we do of others. It's time to let that go. And remember not to ditch healthy habits. With everything that we have going on, with the multiple roles that we're having to play throughout COVID in order to adapt, you know, you may be a wife or a mother, a husband, educator, an employee, and all in the same space. You're all trying to make this happen in your homes through your computers, disconnected and distant. So it's really important for you to take that time to get adequate sleep, to engage in healthy exercise, and to do something that you really enjoy doing. You need to rediscover your sense of self in this. What makes me laugh? What makes me uncomfortable? Do something you enjoy every day. And remember to try new things. You know, the holidays this year, you may have never loved Brussels sprouts, but you've never had them when someone cooks them with bacon. So maybe try the Brussels sprouts this year. You might like them. At least you tried something new, even if you don't. And remember to seek professional help if you need it. Mental health is just as important, and it's often overlooked as our physical health. It's the most valuable thing that you have.
So we wanted to share with you some online video communication services and apps that you may or may not be familiar with. I know most of us have become a lot more technologically savvy this year out of necessity. So if you have an iPhone, there's a FaceTime app where you can video call. An Android phone has Google Duo. Also on Thanksgiving Day, Zoom is offering unlimited use instead of the usual free 40 minutes. It's free all day to help encourage people to physically distance, but have an opportunity to be connected. You may also be familiar with Skype. House Party app is a way that multiple people can join. WhatsApp is free internationally, and there's also Amazon Echo Show, Microsoft Teams. Lots of avenues and opportunities to connect virtually this year. As you can see from the picture, it's a year like no other. We are being creative to figure out a way to be together from a distance. So there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of information about how to connect.
Which, Allison, I think positive outcome from this experience is likely now these aren't going away, right? So we've kind of been catapulted to the 21st century, and we're having increased access and increased ability, which we'll always have that now. This is something that we've gained that we're not going to lose likely.
Absolutely.
So here's a list of some virtual holiday events that we've put together. Some are local and some are, just out there, like NORAD Santa Tracker. This is something that's been around for many, many years, and it's wonderful. You can go online and you can follow, starting on Christmas Eve, Santa's progress all the way across the globe. It's really helpful. I have adult children and they like to do it, so it's for all ages. There's some amazing, the Temple and the Secret Code virtual family Hanukkah show, and children now and adults now have the ability to watch the Los Angeles Ballet perform the Nutcracker, which is something we might not have had before. We would have actually had to physically be there. So this is allowing us access to some pretty amazing cultural events.
That's right. There's also a lot of opportunities to see the Christmas lights around Northwest Arkansas. So I know a lot of you enjoy getting in the car with some hot chocolate and Christmas music. I've seen trees and lights coming up earlier this year than ever before. Everyone trying to find a little joy where they can. So you can see there's the downtown squares in both Fayetteville and Bentonville. Fayetteville will have a virtual lighting ceremony. Bentonville is forgoing the ceremony this year, but you can still enjoy the lights on the square. There are also numerous displays throughout town, as you can see listed here. And we also listed the North Forest lights at Crystal Bridges. It's not your traditional Christmas lights, but it's a beautiful, art, light, music combination at Crystal Bridges that is going on now as well for something a little different and outdoors.
And it's really beautiful. I've seen it. It's really beautiful. So here are some local resources that are available for those who may be experiencing financial difficulties. These are for holiday meals and also toys for young children. You can see we've listed in a variety of locations. And these, of course, will be available to you after this webinar as well. Nancy will talk about that.
We also have a more comprehensive list here. You can see, you can click on this link with the information provided following the webinar. Lots of food resources, some other resources for those in financial need this year.
For those of you who might be interested in making someone else's holiday a little brighter, we have here just a small list of all of the organizations that you could either donate to or be involved with in some capacity. Something fun that you might want to do is be involved in an organization that you would not have ever thought of before or ever participated with before. Try something new. Broaden those parameters like we talked about earlier.
And a lot of these organizations do for others in the community, so it's a way that you can be generous and give back and make somebody else's life a little brighter this year.
Absolutely.
So it's easy to focus on what's not happening this year and what we're not able to do, but there is a lot that we still can do, and it's an opportunity to kind of reflect and reframe on what we do have. And we have opportunities to go outside. We live in a beautiful state with a lot of wonderful state parks and trails and outdoor opportunities. It's a time to really cherish relationships and connection. A lot of times, unfortunately, we don't appreciate what we have so much until we don't have it for a while. So hopefully we will all, on the other side of this, not take each other for granted and the things that we do have. It's also an opportunity to really embrace creativity, connect with things that do bring you joy. We do have a lot of technology. We have a means of, listening to music, movies, dancing, imagination. There's a lot offered virtually, and also really taking care of ourselves. With the health crisis, it's a real focus on how valuable our health is and focusing on what we can control. And we are all in this together, taking it one day at a time.
And remember to embrace the imperfections. As Brene Brown says, imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we are all in this together. And goodness knows we're all in this together, as 2020 has demonstrated. So that concludes our presentation today. Thank you so much for joining. Nancy?
Yes, thank you, Karen and Allison. That was very good information. We appreciate you sharing that with us today. As they mentioned, we will make sure all of these resources are available to you. We'll have captured your email, so we'll make sure we send out the presentation with all of those resources. And we have recorded this session, and we'll send you the download link so you can go ahead and watch that, or even share that with some of your friends or family that may be interested in that. So at this time, we want to take some questions, and we'll provide the answers. And looks like we have one here from Anne. She said, any tips on specifically addressing family members who disagree with you not traveling for the holidays or not getting together with family due to differing opinions about the pandemic?
Yes, this is an opportunity to practice setting boundaries. Also, if it's helpful, you can cite some CDC recommendations. There is new information coming out daily encouraging people to physically distance, to not travel, to do things virtually as much as possible. And just with the pandemic going on, everyone might not agree with you, and that's okay. It's not always possible to have a consensus of agreement, but you have to do what is best for your health and yourself. And that's just going to look different this year. So it is an opportunity and for you to practice setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries are a really good thing.
All right, any other questions that we have out there? All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you. And if you do have any needs, please reach out to us. Of course, we do provide end-of-life care, hospice care for patients and support for the loved ones. And you can always visit us. Our phone number is here. Give us a call if you have a question, or visit our website, nwacircleoflife.com. Lots of helpful information there too, and we'd love to talk to you at any time. Thank you all for joining us. Wait, oh, I see one more question that came up here. I realize there are so many resources via media, but I know some older adults who are isolated and have no internet. What can I do for them? Good question.
That is a good question, and it's particularly difficult. I would recommend having, assuming they have phone access, phone conversations, calling them frequently. Depending on the circumstances, you could wear masks and be very far apart outdoors. It is going to be a beautiful day on Thanksgiving. There are a lot of resources as far as offering meals. You drop off a meal, make a phone call. Again, for those that are alone, would encourage you to do things that bring you joy, having food that you enjoy, music, movies, being outside, enjoying nature, whatever that looks like as far as self-care. Without the virtual piece, then you're really limited to phone as far as connection, or potentially a physically distanced outdoor way, at a distance so you could safely gather in a very small group or just a couple people. But sometimes it can be really uplifting if you're sitting in a house by yourself, just to see another human being, even if it's across the driveway, or have a thoughtful meal dropped off, or a handwritten card, or frequent phone call. Those are things that are always appreciated. And just it's a thinking of you, and as a reminder that you're not alone.
Mm.
I might also add, Allison, good old-fashioned letter writing.
Yeah.
I think that that is an art that has been lost that can be incredibly meaningful. To write letters to maybe your grandchildren or your children, reminiscing about times that you remember and telling them about it, or putting together a memory book from maybe old photos and writing down what those photos mean to you and putting those together. That can make an incredibly personalized, wonderfully meaningful gift for somebody.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today, and wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.